There we go. So the big thing I wanted to point out was just some of the things or the challenges that I've had over the past 6 months with printers, some of the models that have been, pretty bulletproof. And then if we have some other models, just some of the things to look out for, okay? And then, of course, Apple has its own weird things. I shouldn't say weird, they just have some other requirements, and we have to make sure that our network is set properly for that. All right, so we'll go through that stuff. So our standard disclaimer is your mileage may vary, and most of the stuff on this is over the last, I'd say 2 years on some of the samples, but you'll see some of these things have been around for decades. So the information doesn't change that much, but as far as talking about the new models and pricing, all that's current, all right? And then again, or as usual, if you want to get the recording of this, or if you want to see one of the class summaries, I don't think I have a class summary for this one. However, the recording for this will be up next week, and it's at anvcs.org, and you can email us at info@anvcs.org. All right, so let's first start with, let me put on some sound here so I can start this video. Let's just start with the technologies. So there is laser technology and there's ink technology. And they all really do go back to very fundamental basics. And this is from a video that somebody put together probably about 8 years ago, and I really like it. I cut it up a bit just to get to the point.
Let's go over the color scheme of CMYK used in printing: cyan, magenta, yellow, key. A variety of colors are described using the mixes above 4 colors. We all have the experience of mixing paints to create colors in art classes. We are able to make a variety of colors depending on the concentration and amount of paint. Mixing cyan, magenta, and yellow, we are able to create a variety of colors. It is difficult to create a complete black color mixing these 3 colors, hence the black has been added and came up with CMYK.
Another thing I wanted to point out here is notice that in cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, they kind of are additive colors that go on to, or, sorry, they're subtractive colors that go on to paper. If the paper's not a bright white, it will never look bright, okay? So you're never gonna fix that with putting on more of these colors. To get the full spectrum of color and on all the brightness that we can print, we really need to start with a really bright white behind it, all right?
Small particles called toner are attached to the paper, and those dots together portray a photo. Looking at each layer, cyan is blue, magenta is red, and yellow is yellow. Let's overlap these colors of layers. Overlap cyan and magenta. Like we saw a moment ago, colors overlap and are portrayed as different colors. Overlapping all 4 colors turns into these beautiful colors. Same goes for the printing as well. Cyan is printed and are followed by magenta, yellow, and black. Here are 2 rollers. One is charging roller and the other OPC drum.
This is the laser
charging
technology.
roller applies a negative charge on the OPC drum, and the drum delivers small particles called toner on a paper. First,
so real quick, I just want to provide some background on this. The laser printer is actually a modified version of the xerographic process. So all the way back to Xerox and their original way of copying a page is how we do laser printing today. But instead of just using one flashlight source, we're using a laser to scan across it. Okay, so that's how this is working.
Using the charging roller, applies a negative charge on the OPC drum surface. On the negative charge drum surface, laser applies the desired drawing to be printed. Then, the places that the laser have been applied are now positively charged. And apply toners with developer roller. Toner particles are attached to the positively charged drum surface.
So this is the original Xerox process where when you charge the drum, that the toner then sticks to the places on the drum that were positively charged, okay?
Next to the developer roller lies a sponge roller. A sponge roller provides toner to the developer roller. and cleans up toners that's not delivered to the drum. Underneath lies the transfer roller. Transfer roller pulls down the toner strong with the negative charge, which allows the toners to be attached to the paper.
So you can't really, they didn't really say it, but this is the paper in between. So the transfer roller is actually underneath and it's charging the paper. So now anything that's stuck to the roller will now come down and touch on go into the paper. This is all static electricity, folks.
The attached toners are baked with heat and pressure, and final image is made.
So it literally melts it into the paper now.
Inside the cartridge that has toners have 4 colors of CMYK. As the paper rolls over, yellow, magenta, cyan and black toners are attached in the order. And baked with the heat and pressure, the image is obtained. Next, let's find out about the inkjet printers. There are small holes underneath the cartridge where ink is dispensed. Using the electric charge that vibrates the crystal, ink droplets are dropped.
There's actually 2 ways of doing ink. This was talking about a vibrating crystal. This is the way Epson does things, and they use what they call a piezoelectric crystal. And it literally squeezes the ink out the nozzle, okay? So when you charge it up, the piezo crystal grows in a way. It has to kind of push. So it squeezes down and pushes the ink out. The harder the signal, the more it pushes out. Now, when we look at Hewlett-Packard and Canon, they actually use a heating element that boils really fast and then squirts it out, okay? The problem with the heating element one is that those tend to clog faster because it's a heat thing, and they, if you don't continually use these things, you let them sit around, they will clog and they will use a ton of ink when you have to unclog them, okay?
The amount of ink droplets
like
differ based on the strength of the electric charge. Each color is determined in the quantity in designated sections. The inks are mixed, creating the color.
Okay, so that's the basics on how the technology
Let's go over.
So there's 3 ways to refill our different printers. If we have inkjet, we could have either the inkjet tank, where we have large bottles of ink that we put in the printer. And I have one of these. It's made by Canon. I've also had one made by Epson. And what I really like about these is that it's very inexpensive to do this. The ink lasts a long time. I typically refill my black ink about every 2 years and my color ink every year. So my cartridges just, I don't replace cartridges anymore. The other thing I like is that the tank or the little bottles are key coded. They're physically coded, so you can't put the wrong color in the wrong place. Okay, so I did try it just to see, and I could not put I could not put the wrong color in the wrong receptacle. All right, the inkjet cartridge, that's the normal way we had of doing this, and this was the old Hewlett-Packard business model, if you will. They wanted to be able to sell more inks and cartridges. They wanted a big consumable type of a business. So they gave you the printers at a very low cost, typically at cost. And then the inks and the cartridges is where they made all their money. Then laser. Laser used to be really expensive, but as laser processes and stuff have become very inexpensive to make now, it has competed against inkjet, and that's why inkjet had to come out with the tank in order to compete on cost. Okay, so inkjet or laser has become, I think, especially for black and white, it's fantastic. It's fast, it's inexpensive, and it's actually fairly simple to replace the toner cartridges without making a mess. Okay. This is how they stack up as far as initial cost on their value. When we look at inkjet, the initial cost is low, whereas an inkjet tank is higher. But the value per sheet on inkjet has very low value, meaning it's higher cost per sheet, typically 5 to 10 times the cost per sheet than it is by doing with inkjet. Okay. The text quality is about the same on each of them. The photo quality on an inkjet tends to be higher. They have a much more precise way of handling the ink to the print head. So the photo quality tends to be higher, whereas on the inkjet tank, it's a little bit lower. Quite frankly, I don't see a big difference once I go into photo mode on a Canon printer, but there is a difference. Speed, the inkjet cartridge is slower than the inkjet tank. And as far as space efficiency, the inkjet tank is a bigger printer. It's probably about 25, 30% bigger. Okay. If we look at inkjet versus laser, as far as the initial cost, they're now about the same. So that's really changed. It used to be a laser printer was about 2 or 3 times the cost. They're about the same now. The value per sheet, they're saying that the color inkjet is higher than a color laser. That's really changing. The toners tend to be expensive on color laser, but this is really changing now. The text quality is higher on a color laser than it is on an inkjet because the edges are just so well defined, where they tend to be a little bit smeared in an inkjet because an inkjet literally hits the paper and gets absorbed, right? So the edges are not as tight. The photo quality on inkjet, I love the color photo stuff that we can do on inkjet now. Color laser is not quite there. It still looks a little, how do you put it, half-tone, like the old colors that we had in newspaper. It still looks that way in color laser. Speed, the color laser is much faster. This shows it closer, but I find the color laser is much faster, especially if I'm doing multiple copies. If I'm doing multiple copies, the first one takes a little bit of time, but after that, it's like a Xerox. It's just bang, bang, bang. Okay. And then space efficiency, they're about the same. And then the brand and operating system, the HP works really well with Windows and Android, and it has some issues with Apple iOS. HP has done a lot to address this over the last 2 years, but the way they've addressed it is we have to use HP software that constantly sells us ink. And I don't like that. They want you to sign up for their subscription model, and it's too easy to end up spending too much money on ink. And I just don't like the way they've done that. Canon tends to work better with Apple, but we're having problems in Eschaton and in office environments where the consumer Canons don't work, where we have multiple Wi-Fi access points. They don't work well in that environment. They want to know there's one access point and they can attach to that. When you have multiple ones, they get confused. Epson and Brother work equally well in both environments. I think they have the best software and best networking stuff, Epson and Brother. So Apple devices prefer something called AirPrint. AirPrint is a protocol that Apple came out with. It's about security and it's about ease of use. But if our network stuff doesn't handle it properly, it just doesn't work. And we've had some issues with, some people here and having to go in and change their routers and stuff in order to support this thing. All right. It uses something called Bonjour. So if you ever look up, you're going to add a printer, it'll say the printer's name and it'll say Bonjour next to it. Well, what Bonjour is Apple's implementation of something called a zero config protocol, meaning you don't have to enter IP addresses and all that type of stuff. You just point to the name and say add. Okay. But Bonjour itself has some issues, all right? So Bonjour works over TCP/IP, but it uses a slightly different protocol underneath. So it's using IP addresses, but it's not using the TCP part, something using called UDP. And in order to make this work right, we have to have multicast and IGMP running. And in Xfinity world, that's going to be UPnP and zero config need to be enabled. Okay. If they don't, if you have, an Xfinity router in your home, it's going to be those two things you want to turn on: UPnP, which means universal plug and play, and then IGMP stuping. All right. Now let's talk about the printers themselves. We'll talk about, I think, 3 or 4 of them here. If you're looking for an all-in-one means it's not just a printer, it's also a scanner, a document feeder, a copier, a fax machine, all in one, okay? And the one that I really like for this is the Epson EcoTank, and I can get these at Costco for about $300 right now. The pros for this is they have good text print quality. I don't think it's as good as the Canon. It's not as sharp, but it's very acceptable and it is good. But they have very good photo print, equal or better to what's happening on the Canons. They have a modern Wi-Fi and modern network on them, so they'll work in any environment. And the setup and maintenance is super easy. I really like the way Epson software works on whatever computer, whatever device, and I don't have to do a bunch of monkeying with it. It just works. Okay. The cons are it's noisy. This thing is just moving really fast. And if you don't have it on a solid base, it will shake whatever's on top of it. It's moving a lot of mass around quickly. So it's noisy and it needs a real solid base to work on. The first time I tried it, this is how I had an Epson printer and went to a Canon. Is I went to Costco, got one of these, set it up, and my wife was using it. And she's like, "Oh no, this is not going to work," because it was just so noisy. So just be aware of that. They have made some improvements on this, but they have to move a lot more mass in their print head because of the technology type. So it's different. Okay, if we're looking at a color laser print. Oh, Diana, you had a question?
Yeah, I have an Epson Echo Tank, and it's been failing for about a year. It only lasts about 3 years for some reason. The latest message I got, it was the pads are getting worn out.
So the actual pads for that feed the paper and everything? Is that it, Diana? Uh-oh.
Weeks and misses segments and things like that.
Yeah, you cut out there, Diana. We got that the pads are missing, but what else?
Well, now that it's older, I have to do maintenance a lot because there's streaks in the printing and especially color printing or missing segments, and I have to fix the nozzle. So it's about 3 years old now. So I think it's dying. I just replaced it.
Okay, and both Epson and, well, I should say all three, Epson, Canon, and HP, you can actually go out and replace the heads, but quite frankly, those heads are so expensive, you might as well just buy a new printer. So, you can buy $200 print head or spend another $100 and get a whole new printer. So typically people just throw away their old ones and go. As far as lasting 3 years, I've typically had my printers last about 5, 6 years. But Diana's right. As they get older, I'm having to clean the nozzles more and more often. When I have my Canon inkjet or ink tank, it will use half of my ink in order to clear those nozzles. So just be aware that it will just suck up a lot of ink.
That little sponge they have.
Yeah, it just gets soaked. Yeah. Okay, now let's talk about color laser printer. The Brother HL, this is the 3280 CDW. This one was recommended, I believe, by CNET and some others. It's $300 on Amazon. I really like Brother printers. The Wi-Fi, the network, the ease of use, these things are just rock solid. This one, excellent. I mean, really nice text quality. It's okay for photos, but then the modern Wi-Fi, modern network, easy setup and maintenance. And then the heating element that's on this though, because now it's a laser printer, whenever it starts up to heat, to create something, the last step is this press and heat in order to melt it into the paper. Well, that heating will sometimes make your LED lights blink. If these are LED, they tend to be really sensitive to changes in voltage, and heaters and also things like our refrigerators and stuff can make LEDs blink. All right.
Easy to change cartridges though.
Very easy to change cartridges, especially on the Brother. Whether it's color or black and white, this is a no mess thing. You just literally pull out the little safety sheet, stick it in, and go. It's really easy to do.
Has the Brother always had a color feature to it?
No, they've had color printers, but they have not been affordable. The affordable color laser is really like the past 2 or 3 years.
Because I just have black and white, and I don't remember seeing a color one
Right.
available at that time.
Yeah, you would probably have to spend 2 or 3x more like 5, 6 years ago. But now they're getting a lot cheaper.
Why are they so big?
The laser printers are bigger because they have to have so many different toner cartridges in them. So they have to have all that space. And then they have to have all the space too for the heater and the corona wire and all that type of thing. So there's just more to it than just the little head going across, spitting
I had an
ink.
HP before that, and it was an alcoholic. No, seriously, there was
Yes.
something wrong with it. I had to send it back, and they gave me a reused one.
Oh, nice. Okay. And this is one thing I do enjoy about HP is HP support is good. I just don't like the way how do I put it? Their software is much more Windows and Android centric, and their software is now integrated with trying to sell us ink, which I don't like. Okay. It's too easy to buy ink I don't need. All right, so now the next one is the all-in-one color laser jet. And this one is by Brother also. This is the difference between this is just the printer. And this is an all-in-one, again, scan, document feeder, fax, copier, that type of thing. And this is $500 on Amazon. And just like the other one, it's excellent print quality, good photo, good modem, Wi-Fi. And I love the document feeder on this thing. It doesn't jam. My Canon, whenever I have like more than 15 sheets on the document feeder, it just like, ugh, it doesn't know what to do. On this one, I just put them all up there and it goes. Okay. Oops. And these prices were current this weekend, so. Budget black and white LaserJet. This is just a LaserJet printer, but it also does scan and copies. I put a couple of these in, in different clients' places. I really like this printer. It's super simple. It's only about $200. I found it actually on sale sometimes on the low $100. You can get these used under $100, and they are just rock solid. Okay.
What is the cost? Is the price?
I'm sorry, what was that, Marina?
You have a price under cons. Is that good or bad?
That's the typical cost. I mean, this was, like I said, this weekend at $200. I found it on sale whenever, like, Amazon has their annual things. What is it, like in June? They usually have the, what do you call it? That they have their drive or whatever for Prime members. And, you can get these for about $130. But I've actually bought a couple used ones at $80, from people that were just liquidating them from small offices, and they work great. All I do is put a new cartridge in it, and it's up and running.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's talk about printing and how to print. Okay, so the big thing is let's make sure, of course, your printer's powered on. Amazing how many times I've tried to print. I'm like, why doesn't it find my printer? And I go over and the power strip's been turned off. The printer was turned on, whatever reason, it's not on. Okay. The next thing is especially when we live in a community or if we're working in an environment where we're walking in and out of an office, is make sure that your device is on the same network as the printer. Okay. Because it's really easy for me to walk outside with my phone and now I'm on another Wi-Fi or I'm on just my cellular network. I come home and I'm trying to print. I'm not on the same network. I have to be on the same exact Wi-Fi or network as the rest of the printers or the printer I'm trying to get to, okay? And then make sure the printer is loaded with paper and ink. This is another one I do a lot where I'm like, oh, darn it, it's out of paper and I have to go back and do it. So best thing to do is just go to the printer first, make sure it's on, loaded with what it needs, and then try printing. One of the things I do like is that when I get a printer, I prefer getting one with a small display. Usually this is a $20 price increase or whatever, but gosh, it makes setup so much easier and maintenance because if there's ever a problem, it'll tell you right on the screen what it is, rather than trying to have to decode the color of lights, which number of lights, are they blinking or not? I mean, it's crazy. So I just like a screen that tells me what to do. Diana?
Is it wrong to leave the printer on if you print a couple of times a day?
Actually, I prefer to leave my printer on and printers will go to sleep. Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, they will just go into a sleep mode where they're just sipping energy. They're not really staying on. Especially for laser printers, they used to stay on all the time because they're heaters, but not anymore. And the heaters are very reliable even though they're going off and on all the time. All right, so let's talk about printing from iOS, the iPhone and iPad. This is what this looks like. This is my phone screen. I wanted to print this screen because I was looking at Roku Ultras. This is back when, Paul, when you and I were looking at Rokus. So this is how old this one is. All right, so then we go down here and we look for the output or the share button here, which is a square with a circle going outside of it. We press that, okay? Then we scroll down from that list because you can share it by, messaging, whatever. Scroll down until you find print. Okay, then you select the print, number 3. And then make sure that it selects the printer. If you've already printed before, it'll probably pre-select it and say, okay, I'm ready. If you've never done it before, the first time you're going to have to go and click this, select the printer, and then it'll be ready. All right. This is what this looks like. You click it, select which one you want. And then finally, once you have it selected and ready, it'll tell you the printer and you just hit print. And typically for iOS devices, that's all you need to do. Where we run into trouble is when the printer or the network isn't set up right. And then it'll say, oh, I didn't find the right sheet or I didn't find the right printer. So just make sure you are on the correct network and then make sure you have the correct size of paper in it and stuff. I've done things where I was printing envelopes and then I go to print this. I'm like, why isn't this printing right? And it's because it's still thinking I have to print an envelope, okay? So just be aware of that stuff. Okay, printing from an Android, either the tablet or a phone looks like this, where we go up, once we're on, find out what we want to print, we go up to the 3 dots. Once we get into 3 dots, we come down to print. And once you select print, it's very similar to any other interface now, where we're going up, we're going to select the type of printer. And then once we have that selected, then we can either save as a PDF or we can just tell it to print. Okay. And then number 5 is actually hitting the little print button. Okay. And it'll say this. I love this. So we tell it to print and now it says, are you sure? Or yes, or whatever. Use default print service. Well, yeah, okay. I don't like how both iOS and Android keep asking me questions that it should know already. All right. So now on the Mac, and we'll talk about Windows in a little bit, but adding a printer on a Mac is a little bit, how I say, I think it's kind of straightforward, but you have to do it through the system settings. So a lot of times when we get a printer today, they just give you a little card and, you kind of either scan the QR code or you get a link and then it gets all the information and sets it up for you. The Mac doesn't like doing that. A Mac wants you to do it through system settings. So you go to the Apple, you hit system settings, go all the way down toward the bottom to one of the last ones, which is printers and scanners. Once you're in printers and scanners, you hit 4, add printer, scanner, or fax. But notice where they put all these things. It's kind of hard to find this. So unless you've done it a couple times, finding all of these buttons and things and where they are is a little bit disorienting, I think. Once you're in there, then it's going to show you which printers are on your network. And you can see this one's a Bonjour printer, okay? So it's a Bonjour multifunction printer. So because now Bonjour knows it's going to be able to do scanning and that type of stuff too, all right? And then it'll tell me what the printer's name is, and it will typically go and find either on the computer or on the internet the proper driver for that printer, okay? And then once it does, and this might take like 10, 15 seconds for all this to fill in, then you hit add. And then once you add it, then you can give it a name and then finish it, okay? I'm sorry, I did that wrong. You can select it, give it a name, and then finish it with a add. Sorry about that. And then setting up mom's printer. It'll take about, I don't know, this usually takes about a minute for it to just go through and set it all up. And then I always print a test page. Way you can do that is by opening the printer itself, selecting it, so printers and scanners, and you can select it. Once you have it selected, then you just go up to the printer queue. When you open that, you can come up and you'll see all of these menus at the top of the screen. And then you can go into printer and say printer, print test page. And the thing I like about doing a test page, I do this at home, is at least once a week I print a test page. And the reason why is it exercises all of the nozzles because it prints every color on the page and it just says, oh, look, your print test page is good. So at least once a week I do that so things don't dry out, okay? I have here every 2 weeks. We do it every weekend. Okay, on Mac, so now once we have everything set up to print a file or document, when you're in something like we were in PowerPoint, this was when I was making this one a couple weeks ago, going in and then file, you hit file and then print. And then once we're in that, we can select which printer we want to use. Typically in my home, I only have one printer and it's my default one, okay? And then from here, you can go through all the different options. Do I want all the pages? Do I want it in color, double-sided, all those types of things? Once all that stuff is selected, you hit print. All right. Now on the Windows side of things, I think Windows is much more direct in the way things are. When you get your package from HP, Epson, whatever, you get the little QR code and you just take your phone and point it at that and go click. It comes up with a link that you can go to. You hit that and it will load whatever it needs to on your phone and then transfer it to the printer. It is really easy. You don't have to go through all the menus. Okay, so I really like the way Windows and Android are starting to do this. All right. Now, so some closing ideas here is, I think I've mentioned most of these in the context, but Canon Pixma printers, not Maxify. So Maxify was kind of they're trying to market that to small offices and businesses, that type of thing. So SMBs, anybody know that term? That is small to medium businesses. That's what their Maxify line is aimed at. Those actually have really good networking, whereas the Pixma is a consumer related one and they have terrible networking. So it's really odd. So the Canon Pixma, it's a defeatured Wi-Fi and it will be confused if you have multiple Wi-Fi in your residence or in your community or your office, okay? Apple devices need AirPrint for compatibility. A Mac will typically not need it, but if we're using any iPads or iPhones, it has to be AirPrint, okay? Apple's AirPrint needs Wi-Fi routers that allow us to turn on UPnP, multicast, and IGMP snooping. I know those are just, why do we have to know this? It's like, this should just work. And for some reason it doesn't. And this has been a weird thing that's really come up over the past year for me is Bonjour just used to work, but they found some, what do you call it? Security risks in it. So they've updated it, and now I have to turn all this stuff on and configure it properly. So if you have issues, just call your local tech support, whatever, or whoever you can get to help you with that, and they can turn these things on. And then finally, inkjet printers will eventually clog. I don't care if it's going to be the thermal ones like HP and Canon, or if it's the crystal ones like Epson. They will all eventually dry and clog. So it's best to print with them often. They don't want to sit for months, otherwise they will dry out. And at least once a week, just print a test page. So just exercise everything. And again here, PZT technology like Epson clogs less. Okay. Any questions? And we went through a whole bunch of stuff fast. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm getting
just a
on,
moment, Diana. We got one in here.
okay.
Not gotten any ink for 3 years, but it keeps printing.
So she's saying that she's had a printer that for 3 years it just keeps printing. That's awesome. I mean, I don't know if it's a tank or a print head.
I've never put it in because it keeps printing.
That's really nice, but I have had the opposite things with cartridges. I was usually buying cartridges 4 times a year, and that gets expensive. 80 to 120 bucks a month or a shot. It's ridiculous.
Pay monthly fee, but keeps going.
Yeah, and see, this is where I have a hard time with the monthly fee thing too, is because I don't necessarily use that much ink, and if I do, I want it when I need it, not like a prepaid type of thing. So
It's there.
yeah, it is there if you need it. Bob, you had a question?
Pixmo is correctly connected. It sounds like I should leave it that way.
Okay, so Bob was saying that he has a Pixma that he directly connects via USB. I think that is the best way to have a Pixma hooked up because it just works. If you're going to use the networking on a Pixma, it's got issues. Okay, you will run into the problem eventually. Diana.
Yeah, my son's going to do tech work for me on Saturday.
All right.
As a Mother's Day gift. So I got the new XB8 from Xfinity. I'm getting that. I also got a new HP laser printer because my Epson's dying. So what order should all this be set up in?
So I would do the XB8 first because that's going to establish your new network. Because you use that for your Wi-Fi, correct?
Right.
Yes. So once he has that all set up for your network, then you can add your printer and stuff, and it'll be all the same on your network.
Now I have both Apple phones and then two PCs, so doesn't matter, right? I mean, each one has.
You're right, but each device will then have to be attached to the new network.
Now, lots of times it says, you just want to add the network printer.
Right.
Would that work?
I do that a lot. I mean, all of my printers, because, my wife's office and my office are in different areas of the house, but we only have one printer. So it's on a network. And I really prefer setting it up that way. But as we pointed out earlier, certain printers prefer just having a hard link, right? They don't want to go through a network.
Okay, well, he should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. And he'll know that too. He'll do the XB8 first.
Thanks.
Don?
Yeah, Veda, what's your experience with off-brand ink cartridges and toner cartridges?
I've actually had really good experience with refilled cartridges. And the reason for that is the heads are the same. I mean, the heads are still usable for, 2-3 years, but they were built as a consumable for just marketing and for business reasons. So the head can be reused and the inks can be refilled. Just do it with somebody that's rated highly either on Amazon or Yelp or whatever. Because some ink things that I found, they weren't as good. And quite frankly, one of them was surprised because it wasn't the cheapest. It was, just something that was rather new. And yeah, those things didn't work that well. But that was only one one supplier. All of my other ones have been really good. I used to be able to get these at, oh, what was it, Staples, I think, that had refill cartridges and stuff. Now I just get them online if I needed that.
Costco used to do refills, in their photo kiosk, but
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
they used to, but now that the photo kiosk is gone, they're not doing that anymore. So
Yeah, the photo kiosk is gone and now we have ink tanks. So yeah, it's really changed.
yeah.
So
John?
I have a brother, color laser, and saved some of the cartridges. I went to 3 different places in the Sacramento area about getting them filled. One place would fill it, very few were doing it anymore.
Right.
And he wanted $45 or $49 to refill the cartridge. Oh, I can buy a set of 4 of them at Amazon for 65 or.
You're right. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, right. Recycle. I know, which is really sad because then if you ever know how these are recycled, it's a lot of scrap. It just ends up in the junk heap. So, but they do last a lot of, I mean, their duty cycle is really long, many, many pages before you have to replace them. Bob?
it sounds like you use 2 printers, one for black and white and one for color and photo.
No, I use one at home. It's my Canon printer I use for everything. But as far as recommendations that we had up here, there were black and white and color and stuff.
It also sounds like the Epson Echo Tank is, if you want a good all-around printer, other than the noise it makes.
Right.
That, and it has the tank feature rather than the cartridge feature. Sounds like if you need a new printer, that might be the way to go.
Yeah, I highly recommend the Epson. I like its software. I like the way it feeds the paper. It's very reliable. And I like the print quality. The text isn't as sharp, but it's really good.
Now, it sounds like, I've never used a tank.
Right?
When you get the Epson Echo Tank, is just a little bit left in the, or?
No, they actually ship them. So they've done their testing, right? But then they empty it because they don't want a risk of ink getting around. And they actually have a little lever inside that kind of squeezes the tubes so they don't, you can't get ink moving around places. So when you first get it, you'll have to set it up and turn that lever and stuff so everything works. But then you just fill up the tanks with new ink. And it'll take about, I don't know, 2 to 5 minutes for it to get ink all the way through.
You
And
fill it yourself?
yes. Yeah. And it's really easy. And literally you can't make a mess. I mean, you unscrew the top and you turn it upside down, no ink comes out because it has a little stop. What do you call that? The stop valve or check valve in it. And then you put it over the receptacle, which is keyed by color. You do a little 90-degree turn and bloop, down this comes out. So
Had a red finger for weeks.
yeah, when you really touch this ink, it will stain anything, I tell you. And I've done that too, where I've had red hands for a while.
And that brother was an all-in-one as well, wasn't it?
Yes, the brother is you can get the all-in-one I showed here was a color laser, and then the black and white one, which is about $100 cheaper, was just a scanner copier and printer.
I print a lot of photos of people using Guatemala, and so it sounds like the inkjet is better
For photos, I would go inkjet, right? If I wanted to go just all around, all in one type of thing, I would go inkjet if I had to make one choice. But if I want to do something that I'm going to do a lot of printing, I would go with the LaserJet. But if we're just going to do black and white at home, I tell you, I just go to a black and white LaserJet. It's so much more reliable, and the duty cycle as far as how long it lasts before you replace anything is, for me, like a couple of years. Okay. Yes.
I've had the aggravating experience to get a notice that no printer is found.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, nothing changed, hadn't done anything different, had to go in and reinstall it. So.
Right. And this is because of Bonjour and the problem that they found with security. I mean, hackers are always hitting things, and so they found a security risk. So it wasn't a high risk, but it was a risk. And so they updated the Bonjour thing, which then caused the network issues to come about, which I mentioned here with multicast and IGMP. Okay, so the way that works in the Xfinity world is you want to turn on UPnP and you want to turn on what do you call it? Zero config. Those two things, and it works.
I have no idea what that
I know. And thank you, Yvette just walked in. So Yvette does
She will
know.
know.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, I
All
want
right.
to comment.
Oh, go ahead.
I had the the Epson Echo Tank, had it for 3 years. And when you buy it, it comes with the ink, and I didn't have to replace the ink for 2 years.
Right. I'm the same way. I mean, my black ink, I go through really quick, but it's got a bigger tank, right? But yeah, 2 years before I change anything.
Yeah, and you can buy the ink on Amazon, and like the 3 colors is like $40, and that
Right?
lasts another 2 years too.
Yep. It's very inexpensive to run. I like that.
What-
And
Yeah.
so she's talking about, she has an Epson.
Yep, so-
Yeah. And typically it'll last 2 years before she puts any other ink in it. Yeah, I agree. It's really, it's like, it ends up being, 2.5 cents a sheet, including the cost of the paper. So it's really inexpensive. All right. Well, thank you all. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.